You're listening to the Drummer Daily Podcast, the only daily podcast dedicated just to drummers. Go to my website at danielhadaway.com. Hey there, welcome back to more Drummer Daily. If you listened to the previous episode, I definitely realized that something had happened in my recording app and the mic gain was turned up way higher than it had been. So if it sounded a little weird, I apologize. This episode should sound better than the previous one. You'd think after, I guess we're coming up on somewhere around 90, maybe 100 episodes. I know we're close to 100 episodes, which, by the way, if you haven't entered the contest and you're hearing this pretty soon, please do so. If you're subscribed already, you're halfway there to the podcast. If you subscribe to the podcast, you're halfway there. The other half is just a share. There's a post on my social media. The easiest place to find it would be on my Instagram profile, instagram.com/DanielHadaway. And there's a post that says, win this drum. You just got to share that post. And then if you're subscribed to the podcast, that's all you got to do. And then here at the end of March 2017, I'll be randomly selecting one person who did those two things to win the A&F pancake snare, which is awesome. I'm very jealous of whoever wins that. I don't even have that snare drum. Maybe I should get one though. I think I will maybe get one soon. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. I just wanted to say, after that many episodes of recording this podcast, you'd think I'd figure out how to do this recording right. But nope, I'm not. I'm still an amateur. I apologize. But thankfully, you're not listening to me to know about how I record my voice. You're here to talk about drums, and let's do that. So today, I've had this note sitting. I try to at least plan out my topics for the week ahead of time and write them down, because what happens is I always have these really great ideas for podcast episodes, or someone will write and say, hey, you should do this or do that on the podcast. Which, if you have an idea, by the way, send me your ideas for the podcast at danielhadaway.com. But I always have all these great ideas, and then I forget them when it comes time to actually record the podcast. So I've had this one written down for a while, and I was like, you know what? I don't know if I can find a way to do this right or not. I just thought I'd just go ahead and do it so I can get it off my list and stop stressing about how exactly I need to present this. So today I want to talk about some of my favorite alternative percussion pieces. So what does that mean? Well, I'm just talking about things that make sound that drummers can hit that aren't the usual suspects. And I've got, let me think, 1, 2, 3, 4 things that I'm going to talk about. Now, a few of these probably won't be surprises to you. If you followed me for a while or subscribed to my newsletter, you probably have already heard a few of these. If you've ever happened to have caught me on tour anywhere, I play a few of these most of the time, like with All Sons and Daughters. So you've probably seen some of these before. So I apologize if I'm boring you with these, but I love these things. They're so cool. And I love finding new things to play. So, but the first one I want to talk about is something that is new, that is something I don't think I've talked about before. Now, it's kind of hard to describe, and I actually don't even know what it's called. So this is like the worst thing to put in a podcast ever, but I'm doing it anyway. All right, so this is, I got it from Chicago Drum Exchange. So if anyone from Chicago Drum Exchange, or if you've been there, if you know what this thing is called, shoot me an email, daniel@danielhadaway.com. Let me know, and I will provide an update in the podcast for what this thing is called. So it looks like it's a little bit larger than and about as thick as a pack of playing cards. It's all wood. It's got a nice dark kind of the thickness of the deck of cards. If you're envisioning this, the sides of the deck of cards are a darker colored wood. And then the surfaces, the large flat surface on the front and the back, are both a lighter color wood. And I think it says something, I don't have it in front of me right now, but it says something like in the box, or from the drawer, or something like that, or from the box. And that's all it says. The other side has a Chicago Drum Exchange logo on it. But it's a little kind of hollow wood box that, like I said, looks like maybe about as big as a pack of playing cards, maybe a little bit bigger. And it's got, shaker type material inside of it. It's like a filling of some kind, rice or something. So you can shake it in a kind of cool sloshy way. But my favorite thing to do with it is to hold it and kind of play it with my fingers. It's almost kind of like a very, very tiny mini cajon. Now, it doesn't make much tone. It kind of, if you hold it stiffly in one hand and play the top of it with the other hand, it kind of makes a cool snare drum kind of sound, a tiny snare drum sound, or if you play it really quietly, a very short shaker, kabasa kind of sound. So anyway, that's one of my favorite things. Again, I got it from Chicago Drum Exchange in person. I don't know what it's called, but that thing is really cool. Second thing, this is something I've talked about before. Speaking of cajons, is my cajon snare from Index Drums. You can check them out at indexdrums.com. I've mentioned them a lot before, but this thing is so cool, and I've gotten so many questions about it. And they are the originators, I do believe, of the cajon snare. And there are other companies making them now, but I definitely think that the Index one is cool for a lot of reasons. The big one is that it's got a very nice hole in the side of it that it also doubles as a carrying handle. It allows you to get in there, and if you want to mess around with the snares, you can. But the sound is incredible, especially mic'd up. But you can play it with your hands, you can play it with brushes or like hot rods or broomsticks or even drumsticks for certain sounds, and it really does sound cool. So indexdrums.com for that. That's another one of my favorite things. The third thing is another old faithful, old standby that I've got. It is by a company called Bronco Boxes. You can look them up. I believe it's broncoboxes.com. I don't think it's Bronco Box. It might be singular.com. But if you do a Google search for Bronco Boxes, you should find it. They make stomp boxes. So there's a lot of companies that make these, but Bronco Boxes is my favorite, or the Bronco Box is my favorite. It's got a couple of things that I like. It's very large is the first one. It's the size of a license plate. In fact, it's got I believe it's a Wyoming license plate on the top of it. So it's that big. Hear my dog in the background. It's got a license plate on it. So that's kind of the surface that you're playing on. And it's got like a guitar pickup inside of it. So you stomp on it, gives you this kind of cool boomy, sound that is a little different than a kick drum, but it's also got it's got a low pass filter or a high pass filter knob on it that lets you kind of roll on or off the amount of high end tone you want in the pickup coming out of the 1/4 inch that comes out of it. And what's cool about that is you can really control and make a cool sound. I actually have played this thing with my hands before as well because it's so sensitive. You can do that. But that is something that I really enjoy playing with. We played in a whole acoustic tour, basically, a couple of them actually, where I played nothing but the Bronco Box, the Index snare, and one cymbal, and I played with like some of those like plastic type hot rods. So check them out; those are really cool as well. Now, the last thing I want to talk about on this episode, my last alternative percussion piece, is something that you might be surprised is something I'm considering an alternative percussion piece, but I think it's something that people don't think about as much or kind of ignore, and that is brushes. Man, so many people think of brushes as either being kind of a jazz thing or that's it really, jazz ballad kind of thing, whatever. But man, brushes have so much versatility. If for nothing else, the fact that they have so much surface area that you can play with. You can, if you've never whipped a brush where only the very tip ends of the brush hit a snare drum, and compared that to where you almost play a rim shot with a snare, and then you play with, playing like like that kind of sound, but where you're playing with whether or not you let the brushes rest on the snare drum head, for example, when you do that versus lifting them off. Versus instead of just doing that normal circle motion that they always do with the jazz records where it sounds like old vinyl record, with dust on it or whatever. If you've never, done short, abrupt strokes that almost replicate a shaker sound on the snare, there's just so much to playing with brushes. That people don't give it the time of day that I think they deserve. Don't give brushes the time of day that I think they deserve. And I get a real kick out of playing with brushes. I love anytime I'm in a live setting where a song might call for brushes, or the leader says, "Hey, would you play with brushes?" That's like, yes, I'm so excited because there's so much you can do with brushes. I even love, like, the brushes that I have, that I play with, have like a rubber kind of, the part that goes right around the brushes that kind of joins to the handle is rubber. And I love, like, you can kind of do cymbal swells with that, like where you don't really, that doesn't, no attack comes through. So you can do cymbal swells with that. Or if you put like a little sizzler thing on your ride cymbal, and then you hit the ride cymbal with that rubber part, there's no attack that comes through. So it just gives you this kind of sizzle sound that doesn't do anything else. Doesn't have any other wash associated with it. Anyway, man, you can tell I get excited about brushes. But there's so much you can do with brushes. I would encourage you to check those out. So those are 4 quick hits, 4 things, alternative percussion pieces that I really, really like, and think if you haven't checked them out, you should. There's videos, of course, of brushes, but there's videos of all these kinds of things online. So I would encourage you to go look at YouTube or whatever, look these things up. Lots of cool stuff, but go check that stuff out. And thanks for joining me again for more Drummer Daily. We will be back again tomorrow, and I can't wait to talk to you then. Bye for now.